August 18th, 2025. Welcome to This Week in Waukesha, the podcast series. I am your host, Downtown Donnie Brown, coming to you from the office of former Alderman Don Paul Brown here in the Work Hub studios in the 4 Points of downtown Waukesha. I'm joined as always by my extraordinary young, talented producer, the Mighty Max Martinson. And he is working out of the comfort of his home studio there in Milwaukee. And this is a Civic Media production in cooperation with WRJN 540 AM. And Max, do you still go down to Radio Park there on Saturday mornings to help with Jim's show?
Yeah, I'm there every Saturday still from 9 to 11. So,
it's a bit of a clip down to Racine, but it is really it's fun working in a professional studio like that. I felt like when I would go down there on Saturday mornings, I kind of felt like Howard Stern, or one of the big time hosts. So, but anyway, a lot going on, a lot of rites of passage or season. As we approached the end of summer, the school year will begin soon, September 2nd here in Waukesha. High school football will start this Friday night. In fact, our beloved Black Shirts will be hosting Milwaukee Lutheran at Ken Holub Stadium. That's also alumni night, too. And the school pulls out some good stops there. They close off Tenney Road, put up a big tent, and have some beverages and snacks and live entertainment for all the alumni to come and celebrate the beginning of another football season for our beloved Black Shirts, their second season in the new Parkland, in their new conference, the Parkland Conference. And so really looking forward to that starting. I know this week we had some disruptions with the flooding, and of course our hearts go out to all those families in the Milwaukee area that were impacted by it. I know there were some in Waukesha, but not nearly as bad as those in nearby New Berlin. And of course, as you get closer to the city, it's pretty rough. But we're also approaching Labor Day. Labor Day weekend's coming up, kind of the last, long holiday weekend of the summer, and but also an important time to reflect upon, to celebrate the progress of labor in this country, or the history of it, the heritage. I know organized labor has membership has gone down in recent years. But it seems to have been holding steady about 10%. That's the rate I have as of 2023. But there's been a noticeable resurgence in interest and activity surrounding organized labor, particularly among younger workers and in specific sectors like tech and healthcare. And there's a significant increase in public approval of unions and a willingness to vote for them. And many Americans view the decline in union membership as detrimental to both the country and working people. And so to talk more about this is a man whose career has been as a union carpenter, and then towards the last, 15 years as a union organizer. I'm really, really proud to introduce one of my oldest friends, going back to my New York State roots here, Jim Makin. Jim, good evening. How are you?
Hey, Donnie. How you doing? Thanks for that intro.
Sure.
Yeah, it was about 15 years. I worked as an organizer. I was a straight up carpenter for the other 30.
Yeah, and Jim comes to us from the comfort of his home in beautiful Queens, New York. Jim's a Mets fan, so he's licking his wounds from the Brewers sweep a short while back, but he's still got the bragging rights from their triumph in the playoffs over the Brewers last year, and so it's still a bitter pill for us. Although the way they're playing, it's really been another fun season for Pat Murphy's crew. But Jim, if it's okay, let's start with how you got your approach to become a recruiter, or a union rep. I know that it's an interesting story. If you don't mind sharing.
Sure, Don, no problem. It's hard when you recap your life to not about it. But I started out like every other guy in construction. You kind of fall into it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Being able to make projects and stuff like that. And I worked the first decade up in Western New York. It was non-union, and I think I had the same mindset as everybody did in the 80s in New York, that, the unions weren't that good because we had just seen the steel plants all implode. And
we lived through that, yeah.
Yeah. So unions at that point, they had a black eye. So I really wasn't ever seeking out a union. And I met my wife in '94. I moved down here in '97, and in '97 you were union or you weren't really in the construction industry. They had a firm grasp on it. So I joined up, not realizing what I was joining up with. More like I'm just going to get in. And over the next 10, 15, 20 years, my life has become, excellent results. You know what I mean? For things that you don't really think about. Right now I'm currently 58. I'm retired. The union's able to provide health care and benefits, dignified retirement. You put the time in, you get out the other end. And that's priceless. And that's something I think is lost when people talk about unions. Everybody looks for the short-term gains, and people complain about, oh, I have to pay, dues. Why am I doing this? I don't like what they're doing. But you have to look at the big picture.
Sure. Yeah. And Jim, you mentioned earlier about the manufacturing sector in our hometown of Buffalo being wiped out there in the early mid '80s as we were approaching high school, and seeing friends of ours, their dads having to relocate for 1 or 2 years to like Oklahoma or Cleveland or somewhere, or whole families being uprooted just so dad can get the pension.
Mm-hmm.
And as a good, kind of a reference for the local listeners, if you haven't seen it, you have to see the documentary about the '82 Brewers that won the American League back when they were in the American League and then went to the World Series. And it was called Just a Bit Outside, as Euchre used to like to say, was the name of it. But in those first 10 minutes, they talk about the state of Milwaukee's economy in the early '80s, late '70s, early '80s. And they had their share of plant closings and or downsizing. And so, Milwaukee suffered a little bit, not like we did in Buffalo. I mean, Milwaukee, it's a very dynamic area and had a little bit more of a diversified economy than we did, that they were able to weather the storm. Whereas for us, it really was a huge watershed in our city's history. And it never really came back. It's really become more of a service economy. And that's hard to feed families with, service economy incomes. Is that fair to say, Jim?
Yeah, and I don't think the infrastructure was there for a service economy. And Buffalo had really come up from its roots being an industrial blue-collar city.
Yeah.
I mean, Bethlehem Steel, how many people are they employing? 35,000?
Yeah. I guess it's not Bethlehem Steel plant in the world.
Yeah, and I remember the shifts. You'd time your traffic around it because you didn't want to be on the roads when they went from first shift to second or second to third. So, they had all their apples in one cart. I don't think they anticipate anything changing. Lackawanna, the suburbs. You go out there, every other corner had a bar, local bar. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was supported by the guys that got off shift. So, in that sense, it's tough when a business changes like that.
Yeah, and you also had Republic Steel, and you had the General Motors foundry plant in Tonawanda, which was one of the more prominent GM manufacturing facilities in the big three universe, for sure.
Sure. And the Ford stamping plant down by Hamburg. I think they're both still there, right? Just not the same.
Well, then, my family, was the grain milling that had pretty much been wiped out by the St. Lawrence Seaway.
Yeah.
And so, and so there's a lot of people blamed organized labor because of the wages that they were commanding, but it had much more to do with management's missed opportunities on research and development when things were going really well in the post-war economy. And books have been written about it, and what we've seen, like in the '80s, I can establish when unions partnered with management and profit sharing opportunities that saved jobs and saved companies. And so it, I know, living in Chicago, the concept of union oftentimes is compromised when you go to like McCormick Place or any of these big convention trade show venues where you'll see like 2 or 3 guys pushing a chair with wheels, or an electrician that comes to investigate a problem at a booth and says, "Oh, this is what's wrong. I gotta go back to my shop and get it. I'll be gone an hour," and he's getting paid for it. And just like things, things are always very upsetting, but it does a disservice, especially to the guys in the building trades like you that basically built our great cities and our nation.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're always gonna have stories. You're always gonna have good guys, bad guys. On the whole, I think unions, the positive influence they have outweighs those stories. I mean, you go into the private sector, you got people
Oh
that
God.
have jobs that same thing. They're
Yeah.
and they don't really, they're just collecting the paychecks. I mean, that does happen.
Yeah.
And nobody can deny that. But
Yeah. Oh, I had a customer who their server was also being used. The money, the profits were being used to set aside funds for their kids' college tuitions, and all that was being managed on the company server. When the smart thing would have been to like do that offsite. Like you have a personal, you have personal financial people to take care of your family stuff, but they did it all in house, and it caused a great deal of disdain among the rank and file. Like where's our kids' college fund?
yeah, no, I know it's you use the union to speak up for people that can't speak up. And I always remember, working up in Buffalo my first couple of years. I did not ask for a raise. I was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're very lucky or happy to get a job, when you get a job and you don't really want to get a raise. But then if you don't speak up for yourself, they don't really pay you more. You know what I mean? They
Right.
get just enough to keep you going. And that's I think what a lot of people today are forced into. Just enough to pay the bills, and that's it. And maybe a little bit more if they cry loud. And the union, when everybody speaks together, he gets such a better deal. And I think people are noticing that, like you say, in those industries. When you go to the tech industries and the people like that, they realize that speaking as one is much easier than one person going in and everybody else being dissatisfied. So there's a lot of things to think about when you get a union. But a lot of I think, like I said, I think our mindset for our generation was well, it's not worth it. But I think it's turning around when you see what happens when business has its own its own way all the time.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
of a sudden you're a number.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And labor has always been a struggle. You know what I mean? It's a labor movement. It's not a labor sit still. And I think that's the problem that occurred, in the steel plants, is that they were comfortable. They didn't want to move forward or sideways or backwards in every
A
direction.
lot of complacency, sure.
And I've run into this as an organizer. You know what I mean? You just can't win all the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Sometimes you have to accept that maybe you're going to come in with a loss, or you're going to come in with something, at least keep the ball moving forward.
Yeah. Yep. We're talking to Jim Makin, retired union representative with the Carpenters local. What's the local there in New York City?
Well, there's actually 7 locals. I was part of Local 45 in Queens,
Local
but
45.
I worked for the district council, and they handled Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn, the 5 boroughs.
You're a big time, Jim.
Yeah, it's a big time industry. It's
Sure is.
It's no joke. You're talking. I think last year there was $11 billion in construction.
Right.
I mean, that's amounts that stagger everybody's minds. You know what I mean? There's a lot of work going on in New York City.
Yeah.
A lot of hands in the till from the top all the way down to the bottom. So it's
Sure.
an interesting. You go back to the origins of New York. In those movies, the gangs from New York. That's pretty much how it was. It was scary times back then.
Yeah.
Organizing was a much more dangerous game back then.
Certainly.
For my part, it was much, thank God, much more civil. You know what I mean? There wasn't that many threats.
Yeah.
But I think my job was more a social. I can't believe I've forgotten the word. More social justice than anything else. You know what I mean? I would say, look at the conditions you're working in. You don't have to be like that. A lot of people.
Yeah, that's the thing, is there wouldn't be OSHA or any of these occupational safety or child labor laws, any of that, had it not been for organized labor.
100%. And OSHA, is another thing. It saves lives, even though people don't want to hear it. And when you're young, you think you're invincible.
Yeah.
You think, oh, I don't care, I can do that. Who are they telling me to do this?
Sure.
Because you don't get injured. But once you get that injury, you realize, nobody's looking out for me, but me. So you need another watchdog out there to make sure that employers don't do what they do to make money. They turn their head, and I'm not saying all employers. It just takes a couple bad apples.
Yeah.
course, a whole bunch because they're all competing.
Yeah. A couple years ago, we had a similar guest. We had Stephanie Bloomingdale, who is the president of the. Do you know Stephanie? She's the president of the Wisconsin AFL-CIO.
Okay, I've heard her name. Yeah, without a doubt.
She's very well spoken, and we had a really great. And one of the topics we I guess honed in on was executive salaries, CEO salaries, and how they. I forgot the percentage, but I think it was something like 870% higher than the average skilled laborer.
Oh, that's always been, when I was in the field, I always had that number quick by. Sometimes they're 10, 100 times more than the worker. And, I've always been of the opinion that I want my boss to pull up on the job in a BMW or a Jaguar because, a successful business means that you're going to be working all the time. But it's gotten a little extreme. I think, and that's always the same. When you let people just take, they keep taking and they keep taking. And if nobody says no, next thing you know, you get this huge disparity. I'm not saying management doesn't deserve,
right. Our executives should be paid well, but not to an extent where it cripples, the rank and file or people that are actually doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly. And the golden parachutes and all that stuff.
That's risking their lives.
That came out. It's funny. You think about the 80s, Donnie, right? When they had the He-Man universe, the Men of Wall Street that came in and raided, and everybody was like, wow, that's amazing. When you do a little dig down in it, you found out they looked for companies that had pension plans, and they came in and bought the company, built up what their assets for the pension plan was, took a loan out, and then just let the company die and just kept a huge slice of the pie. So, it wasn't that impressive what they did. They weren't, doing more than just pirates, stripping companies. And that led to what we have now, I think, where we have a system where, you're kind of like fighting for everything, you know what I mean? Just for your basic things that you need to live. Healthcare is very important. I didn't have healthcare probably until I was 26, 27. Wow. They weren't offering it. I was afraid to ask for it, and when you're healthy, it's fine. But, not everybody is healthy.
Thank God nothing bad happened to you on the job.
Knock on wood.
A lot of things could have happened.
Yeah. And I always thank God I was able to find a union and start getting these benefits. So it's something, once I got it, I realized how much it was worth. And I realized how much, I didn't speak up for myself. And that's kind of drove me in my career to when I spoke with workers, to just say that. My biggest, not selling point, but I think the thing that hit home the most with workers is, they would say, oh, I'm doing good. I'm making, $40 an hour. Why do I need a union? I said, no, I understand that sounds good, but where do you see yourself in 10 years? Right. Where do you see yourself in 15 years? You know what I mean? Because I'll tell you where you'll be in 15 years if you work, and have benefits and you have all these things. And where do you think you'll be at this job? And it really floors a lot of them. A lot of them, started to realize, hey, wait a minute, I'm kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul here, and eventually comes around the other way.
Did your union have a scholarship fund for your children, or for anyone that was?
So most unions that have been around a while, that comes from the membership. All the money in the union comes from membership. So what happens is they'll have a scholarship fund, they'll have drives, just the basic social functions, and it adds up. We have them.
But it's an incentive for recruiting good talent.
It is, but they don't particularly pick anything for talent for that. The scholarship funds they have is for the kids.
That's what I mean. That if you're in the trades and you're looking maybe to switch over to a different trade or a different union, and knowing that there's that scholarship fund that may incentivize you if you've got a smart kid living under your house.
Yeah,
we're going to continue this discussion here in the second part of our podcast as we close down this first one with Jim Makin from the New York Carpenters Union District Council. Local 45, though, is where he cut his teeth. And really excited to continue this discussion on This Week in Waukesha, the podcast, as part of our upcoming Labor Day commemoration. So stick around for more here on This Week in Waukesha. And thanks for tuning in so far.